Alright everyone, it's day 2 of the big pile of bullshit regarding Julian Assange. I see more apologists coming out. Like one person the other day, just as an anecdote, like on Twitter was like, well, thanks to like WikiLeaks and shit like that, it like destroyed the US war effort and stuff, could have gotten people, and I'm thinking to myself, why the fuck do I give a shit about the war effort in the first place? No, you can, you support the troops by not wanting to send them over into some godforsaken foreign country to get shot at for no reason. Name me one thing that got better as the result of our invasion of Iraq. I'll wait for 1,000 years. This person was peddling the old bullshit line that the neocons dragged out of their ass. Well, Saddam was developing nuclear weapons, you know, the ones he didn't have the sophistication to develop. Like, that's a justification for going in and completely laying waste to the whole country. It would have been better. Let's assume for a second that Saddam Hussein was as bad, as fucking crazy as everyone thought he was. It would have been more justified, strange as though this may sound, to take a small nuclear weapon and drop it on whatever palace he was at the time with his sons and Chemical Ali having a state dinner meeting. It would have caused fewer casualties, less damage to Iraq's economy and to its culture, and probably ended up with a better long-term end result, and it would have been a hell of a lot cheaper in terms of manpower lost, manpower disabled, certainly equipment utilized on the field, and also, you know, important to the neocons at least, cold hard cash. Would have been so much cheaper, but the thing is, then they wouldn't have been able to test out their next generation of new military systems. Now, here's one thing. The one thing which all the warmongers technically can stand upon is that the fact that we keep provoking and antagonizing people in other countries and then deploying experimental weapons and strategies means that our overall readiness is significantly higher than most nations. The fact that we are a warmonger allows us to advance more rapidly. The problem is that the one type of group that is completely immune to this counterbalance. Standard armies, they fall before us like fucking dominoes very easily. The one other group that always is developing things as well, insurgents. Terrorists, basically. And so basically we're creating the same groups that then attack us, and oddly enough then give a further justification to attack elsewhere. It's a self-feeding spiral. It's the never-ending spiral of unwinnable war, and it gives us some advantages, but it comes at such a catastrophic cost, especially diplomatically, I would say at this point, that as long-term it is untenable. Eventually it will break apart Western civilization if we keep it up. I completely oppose it by the neocons. There are other ways to test weapons systems. We got plenty of open land. Test it out there. Tested on the insurgents that we've created all around the world, preferably with the blessing of the governments of those nations, instead of worrying about invading nations constantly or doing fucking drone campaigns against schools and hospitals. Yes, that wins us a lot of hearts and minds around the world. Too bad they're all splattered in the dirt somewhere. But Julian Assange exposed a lot of this stuff. Fundamentally, what I'm seeing from the police state, surveillance-loving, censorship-happy war apologists is that somehow it is justified for the US government to be so shifty and dirty that it's going to prosecute a person for publishing material pertinent to their own crimes. And also I'm seeing, well, Russia, thank goodness Julian Assange is in jail. He's a Putinist puppet. So in other words, you're saying that the way the Russian government chooses to attack us, the most effective way for them to attack US interests, is to simply tell the US citizenry the truth about what our government is doing in terms of military strategy? And in terms of campaign shit going on, like the Clinton emails and stuff. So you're saying that the way for the Russians to win is to erode faith in the US government by pointing out what the US government is doing. That's more telling about the fucking US government than it is about Putin. Of course the Russians are going to exploit such things for propaganda purposes. That doesn't mean the WikiLeaks release isn't real, and it doesn't mean that the US citizenry doesn't have the right to know what the fuck is going on. Give me one example where Julian Assange provably has caused any significant casualties as the result of releasing this material. And by the way, you're trying to make a facetious argument when you don't point out the very large amount of stuff that WikiLeaks has done that's released about other governments. WikiLeaks is not a one-sided group. If they're getting intel on the Kremlin, they release it. There have been releases on Russian figures as well. And I believe pro-Russian Ukrainian forces, I believe there were a considerable number of leaks about them. Maybe their intel protection levels were lower. Learned from the best, but they didn't quite adapt it as well, I guess. So we see leaks from all sorts of countries. Well, yeah, we have a right to know our taxpayer money is going towards, programs that are shitty, like torture and stuff like that. And it was funny to see these same liberals, so-called, of course, at the time praising Assange when he released this stuff. Now, all of a sudden, years later, they're pretending that they didn't admire that. Now it has to do with Putin. Oh, it's Russia, Russia, Russia. It would have been so funny if all of the neocons, mostly but not all Republicans at the time, when Bush decided to haul off and invade countries for no reason, it would have been so fucking hysterical to me if the Republicans had come out and started rambling about the Kremlin saying, well, that these terrorists are funded by the Russians, Red Scare 2.0, they would have been laughed at by all of the same liberals, again, so-called, that are currently laughing at Assange. And they're still making shitty jokes about him. Oh, thank God. Oh, ha, 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 his Dave Letterman beard. Yes, again, you are mocking a person who has been a political prisoner for years and years, and who has been robbed of basic access to goods. Podesta made this mistake. John Podesta, he was joking around about Julian Assange, and he was like sitting there eating like filet mignon or something with his rich friends, and WikiLeaks actually tweeted at him. They're like, yes, we know that when you're like rich and corrupt and have this high standard of living, you like mock the poor and look down on them and stuff. You're looking down on the political prisoner, and that's what Assange is. I speculated the other day, don't expect it to be all that long before people who defend Assange are labeled as conspiracy nuts or something, and that material is suppressed in one form or another in certain websites. Do not be surprised if that happens, because there's too much popular resistance against the idea of saying, hey, this dude was trying to release the truth about the war effort, so-called, Raytheon's, money grab operation in the United States. Well, that's basically what happened. He releases that info as a publisher, and what they're trying to go after him, they're extraditing him to the U.S. What they're going after him for specifically is a little bit more limited. They're trying to get him up to 5 to 10 years in U.S. prison. Why? Because when he was coordinating with Manning, there was a back and forth, which is different. It's different than just if the documents are anonymously dumped on WikiLeaks or something. What they're saying is that Assange was trying to give aid, and therefore was involved with the conspiracy. I'm sitting there. Didn't your Messiah, hey, liberals out there who think that he's like a Russian pawn or something, did not your Messiah Obama commute the sentence of one Chelsea Manning himself personally right before leaving office? So then what the fuck do you have a problem with Assange for? He's already been in jail for longer than Manning was in behind bars. Already has. How long was he locked up in that embassy in a fucking single room with a little toilet area, you kind of wash up and stuff? He was basically a prisoner for the last years, the equivalent of solitary confinement. He served his time for any crime you think that he committed. And the idea that releasing this material in the first place is somehow unconscionable, my goodness, if they had any journalistic integrity at all, you'd be able to give this info to CNN or the New York Times. They would release it too. But instead, they pick and choose because there was a shock effect. During the Obama administration, Obama went after certain journalists that were too critical, especially from the AP. Notably, thereafter, when that was disclosed, there was a sort of odd, cold silence among lamestream journalists. They had been brought into line. They were afraid. They were afraid of getting their ass kicked by the U.S. government's deep state sort of embedded assets. That's what it boils down to. They don't do journalism anymore. If you want fair political analysis and coverage of current events, you're probably on YouTube or fucking you're on Dissenter or 4chan or something like that. You're watching videos made by some random person in their living room half the time. That's what I do. Where do you think that I prefer to get my information from? It's going to be from someone that I can directly confront and directly debate if I happen to disagree with what they're saying. That's not CNN or the New York Times. But I can tweet at WikiLeaks half the time, they'll probably respond. They probably will respond to a DM. It's ridiculous. People saying all this crazy shit about Assange. Dude, the dude has suffered for years and years. He could have sold out and said, oh yeah, okay, I'm giving up. Yeah, I'm just gonna, I'm sorry about that non-existent sex assault in Sweden. I'm sorry about the non-existent poo on the wall incident in the Ecuadorian embassy that was apparently being lampooned earlier. Like the other day, it was I think a joke article, but people will grab onto it as though it was real. I'm like, oh, he was mean to the people in the Ecuadorian embassy. He didn't get along with them. Oh, he didn't get along with people that are stymieing his ability to talk to the outside world while being a political prisoner under asylum? He was given asylum freely. Fuck the people at the embassy. Who cares if they're inconvenienced by Julian Assange asking them for a napkin? Yes, well, you have a little bit of mercy on somebody who's trying to change the world, I would say. basically locked in the Tower of London. Now he's going to be extradited here, and you watch. It'll be. I hate to say this. Those people that are being like, oh well, he carried Gore Vidal's book out, and therefore he's signaling to the world everything will be okay. Just believe the QAnon stuff. But I'm sorry, but that's probably bullshit. I'm sorry, but what's likely to happen is a kangaroo court fucking proceeding, a show trial, in which he will be continuously in solitary confinement for his protection, of course. He'll be deprived of basic legal counsel. His legal counsel will probably be inept anyway, and he'll be thrown in prison. And you'll never hear from him fucking again, because he'll probably, at his age, he'll probably die in prison. He has apparently some degree of health problems, he's not a young man anymore. He's been robbed of some of the best years of his life by people who wanted to defend warmongers and the fucking surveillance state. What these cucks are basically saying is, I don't want to know the truth because the truth is scary. It challenges what I've been told is real, and so I think I want to just call it all conspiracy theories. No, we don't want disclosure. We want to be slaves. It's basically what it boils down to. Well, fuck them then. They deserve whatever fate they get at that point. That's about all. Peace out.